right. This is going to be a fun one. Yesterday, we were celebrating a lot of things for Tornado Cash and welcoming Alexei here and his lawyer. And then last night, something happened. I would like to welcome Kieran and Ameen to the stage to explain to us what in the hell happened. I could only follow crypto Twitter last night really lately. Round of applause for Kieran and Ameen. Thank you. Okay. Let's hear about this Tornado Cash exploit.
Perfect.
Yeah, good morning. Hello. Good morning, everybody. Yeah, so last night, the Tornado Cash governance was attacked by a malicious proposal. It's always fun when these things happen during conferences, because then we all get to talk about it. I remember when Geth was DDoSed and ETH Shanghai, and Vitalik had to go in the war room and figure out how to debug Geth, reprice some gas thing so that it would work. This was kind of like that. The attacker submitted a proposal to the Tornado governance, and the proposal contract code was self-destructible. So he self-destructed it and replaced it with some other code that then printed him a bajillion governance tokens and allowed them to take over the contract, the governance. So now Tornado governance is in the hands of a malicious attacker, and everything that the DAO owned is basically under their control. So we're going to go over how this happened, what they took over, and what we can do about it. You want to go?
Sure. Yeah, so a rough timeline of events. About a week ago, or 8 days ago now, the attacker submitted a proposal to the Tornado Cash governance that, on first look, did exactly what the description said it would. But yes, as Ameen stated, it had the ability for the proposal contract to be self-destructed. And there's an unfortunate interaction with the way that some of the deterministic deployments on Ethereum work, which allows you to, it's not meant to be possible, but you can deploy something with the same deployment script, which means it'll deploy to the same address, but with completely different functionality. And so the attacker, obviously, the proposal was something that got passed, and the attacker waited until the proposal was passed and deleted the old proposal and replaced it with one that minted a bunch of new governance voting power to their address. And then went ahead and executed the proposal, and because the address that the proposal lived at was the same as this new malicious proposal, they ended up getting a whole bunch of governance power. And what have they done so far with it? So they've got access to from the governance contract. They've got access to the Torn treasury and a couple of kind of periphery contracts. So the core Tornado Cash classic pools are immutable. They can't be changed. And so anything in that can't be influenced by the governance. But there's a couple of things that kind of surround that, which the governance contracts do have access to. So there's the router contract, the fee registry, the two main ones, and the Torn treasury. And so they pulled a whole bunch of Torn tokens out of the treasury there and have dumped it on market. That's about the timeline for what's happened so far.
They also control Nova. You want to talk about?
Yes. So Nova is kind of the next iteration or a new kind of thing on top of, well, not on top of, a new system that kind of is built on XDAI and through a bridge. Operates or interacts with Ethereum.
Jump in.
Sure.
So the Tornado Nova is like on Gnosis chain, and the idea was for it to have like arbitrary deposit amounts and be able to have like internal shielded transactions. It's a pretty cool system altogether, but it was still experimental, and so it was upgradable. And by virtue of being upgradable, that means the Tornado governance can update it, and you can like update one of the contracts to be like, this is a valid proof if the message is my wallet, or the sender of this message is my wallet, and therefore give me all the money, right? That's not what you want. That's just a rug pull waiting to happen. So please note, if you have any money in Tornado Nova, you should probably remove it if you're not a U.S. citizen, because if you are a U.S. citizen, you are still sanctioned, and you can't remove it. But for everybody else, you should remove it. This isn't like an immediate threat. You're not going to lose your money tomorrow because the attacker has to submit a proposal to go rug pull Tornado Nova, and the proposal will take a week. So please proceed to the exits in an orderly fashion. Yeah. The other thing that is annoying, so what he mentioned so far was that they control the like relayer registry and the router. So the relayer registry is just like on the UI, the drop down of like the relayers that you can pick to get, relay the money. And then the router is another thing that's used by the UI to like select, which contract you're using. And so for, people should be advised that even if you have this, replace the UI, like you have to also then make it point to not those contracts, because those contracts are controlled by the governance and they can point them to something malicious. And so, I'm sure inevitably somebody is going to redeploy, some anon or something is going to redeploy the contract, the relayer registry, the router, the fee registry, like he was saying, and then not have them controlled by governance and point them to the immutable base, 110 ETH, 100 ETH pools, which will allow people to continue to use and withdraw those if they're not U.S. citizens, because they're sanctioned. I have to keep saying this. It's whatever. The other thing that's really annoying for me personally, I'm getting to that, is that they control the tornado.eth, the ENS, the name. And as a result of that, I had to rip this QR code off the back of my shirt. I burned it because it points to tornadocash.eth.link, which is controlled by the ENS name, which is owned by the DAO, which is owned by the attacker. And so now it could be pointed to a malicious, UI or web page tomorrow. Not great, but it's not like a devastating loss. We'll make new T-shirts or something. The biggest risk is, once again, Tornado Nova. If you have money in there and you're not a U.S. citizen, go ahead and withdraw it. And if you are still so bold as to have torn LP tokens and have been getting dumped on for the last day, you might also want to pull those out of the LP pool. Once again, if you are not a U.S. citizen, because the actual torn tokens are also sanctioned.
Yeah. I did find it a bit interesting, the particular method that the attacker used, because they gave themselves extra voting power while they had like the execution context of the governance contract. They could have given themselves immediate access to everything, but now they've kind of locked themselves in a 7-day time lock on every action that they're going to do. So that's a bit odd. I don't know why, but.
I think today is an important day for us to all learn the value of immutability and ungovernance. Every new code update that you deploy for whatever DAO you have, you voted in, you think it's a good idea, well, every update, that has to be approached with the same level of scrutiny as you would any other part of your code base. You have to get it fully audited every time. There's no excuse. You know, Euler happened a couple weeks, a month ago or whatever. Same basic idea. They made a lot of governance updates, and one of them had a bug in it. I went and I told my, Reflexor DAO for RAI, I'm like, hey guys, I think it's time to put up a bounty for a bot that tags everybody in Discord every time there's a proposal so that we all know and are aware and can be on guard. I've been talking about ungovernance for a while for this specific reason. It's because, if you keep, on a long enough timeline, governance attack becomes the most risky way for a protocol to go down. The sort of smart contract risk is higher at the beginning, and then over time it sort of drops because it sort of gets lindy, you build some confidence around it. But the governance attack risk always remains, and so you need this constant vigilance in order to defend against that kind of thing. And so the fewer things that governance can do to rug pull the users, the more that there's delays in the process, and the more there's potentially safeguards. These are all good ways to protect the users from yourself and from the governance if somebody tries to attack it.
I assume we don't need to talk about admin keys.
Oh, yeah. So the reason that the 110 ETH, all the classic pools are fine is because the admin key was set to 0 on purpose 4 years ago so that today I wouldn't have to freak out and I could go enjoy Amsterdam last night.
Yeah.
It's a great city. I just got here for the first time. Yeah, bullish on Amsterdam.
Up on stage, and thanks for being up on stage and talking about this pretty timely attack. Ameen, what frameworks do you have in mind for structuring ungovernance?
Yeah, so ungovernance is like a meme first. It's like a culture of we want to have meetings to have less meetings. We want to remove the ability of governance to do things. You start out with governance, everything controlled by a multi-sig or something. You progress to everything controlled by DAO, and then in the example of RAI, right, we've actually removed functions from being controlled by governance at all and set them to 0, right, or they can't be updated. And so for the example of RAI, you can't actually update the collateral type, right? We can't update certain contracts anymore. And if we wanted to do that, we would have to redeploy the whole contract, right? And in the case of Tornado Cash, the ungovernance part, the part that is currently saving, the 110 ETH 100 pools, is the fact that we set the admin key to 0. So governance does not control those. Nobody control those. Nobody can change those. Those are going to be immutable as programmed until the end of the Ethereum blockchain or the heat death of the universe, whichever one comes first. So that's the thing. And then there's also other mechanisms that you can build in by adding delays, for example, to hard code certain proposals or add a delay before something is executed. Like in the case of RAI again. If you want to add a new oracle, where oracles are typically the most risky type of, governance thing to add, because the maximum downside if your oracle messes up is oh, okay, here's what we're going to do. First, we're going to set, the collateral value to 0, and then we're just going to liquidate everybody, take all the money, and then we're going to set the collateral value to infinity, and then we're going to mint infinity RAI, and then we're going to go to every lending pool and every AMM on the blockchain, and we're going to wipe out everything in a single block, right? Not great. So we hard-coded that to 60 days. Right? And we can't change that. And if you want to add a new one, and that gives us the opportunity, for example, to, the governance is less than that. So it's I think a week right now. I want to make it more. But even within that, if somebody somehow votes to add a malicious oracle, it doesn't take effect for 60 days, and then people can sort of reconvene and be like, whoa, let's gather all the tokens and vote to make this, remove this new oracle from coming into existence.
Next question.
Thank you. So related to what was just asked, for the parts of the protocol where you do need governance because variables need to be flexible, if you had a magic wand, what does the optimal or what does the best risk management framework in your mind look like? So if you had to go from something is proposed all the way to it's implemented, what are those steps at each point?
You want to go?
All right. I guess there's a couple of things that you want to look at within your DAO governance system. So one, voting on as a temperature check, and then having someone else implement the changes later is, I mean, even if you kind of trust the person to carry out the proposal honestly, not everyone has no one has perfect OPSEC. Keys are going to leak eventually. So the kind of multi-sig model is a bit dangerous. So you want to be voting on the actual actions that get carried out on chain. Two, having some sort of time lock. So even if a malicious proposal gets through, there is some time to either remediate or have people find the exit. And three, you want to be making sure that you're watching the voting contract pretty closely, because you don't want to be in a situation where you don't know that a vote is on the table and it passes and you're caught off guard. So there's a number of services and bots and scripts and all you can give it an arbitrary contract and tell it to watch for calls to a specific function. So if you're using a particular protocol, or you have a large position in a DAO, I would recommend grabbing something like that and setting it up, point it to the voting contract, just so at least you yourself. I mean, even if the governance Discord or whatever has its own bot, right? You're trusting that bot or the person's running that bot not to give you false information or withhold a voting thing. So you run that thing yourself for yourself.
Hopefully these are two different parties. You're not getting rugged by the person who set up your Discord bot. Then you might have bigger problems. Another one, a funny one, somebody was like, hey man, do you want to participate in uni governance? I'm like, I am. I'm perma abstaining on everything. And they were like, no, but we want you to get involved. I'm like, okay, here's my plan for getting involved. Set up a smart contract that votes no on everything, and I will delegate to that. And anybody could poke it, and it's just no, 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 no. And that's it actually raises the bar on how hard it is to attack the thing. It's a useful contribution. I'm just saying, you better really want this, and then to fill, add to what Kieran was saying. There's typically the voting on and governance happens through a couple phases, right? A proposal is submitted, and then there's a delay before it enters the voting period. And the votes that you have are tallied at the beginning of the voting period. So you have that window of time between when a proposal is submitted and when it enters the voting, if you set it up, this way, to go around and be hey, do we have enough tokens to vote on this properly? So that's one of the things you want to be able to watch. Another is then during the voting period, you vote, you do what you can. Let's say you fail, then there's a grace period or a time lock, as different people call it different things. But it's the delay before a passing proposal is then executed. And so that's the window during which not very many systems are set up to cancel a passing vote during that delay. Very few that I know of. Moloch v3 has a thing for it, but it doesn't.
So does Railgun.
Huh? Railgun? Oh, nice. And then I think Compound Bravo had one, but you need to. It's the person who proposed it can cancel it, which I don't know if that would help in this type of situation, because the proposer is the attacker. One other mechanism that I would think is cool is having I don't know, hundreds, let's call them sentinels, right? And they each get one NFT. And they can only do one thing, which is like you can burn the NFT one time, and that will simply extend the time lock for executing a passing proposal by like 1 day. And maybe it's like a global thing for like all proposals, right? And so that way you can like brick, the 100 of you in a decentralized fashion can like brick all of this. And in this case, that would actually be helpful because like if they go and try to execute any proposals while this is like a shit has hit the fan and you are exiting this protocol and you just need to like cover people while they get out, right? You've already lost in this scenario. But like in order to protect the people's funds while they exit, you could, for example, burn, a bunch of these sentinels can burn their NFT and then brick the governance for like a while, and that way the governance can't do anything else malicious while the people are exiting. Nobody, to my knowledge, has implemented something like that, but that would be pretty cool too.
All right, last question.
Definitely. First of all, thank you so much for sharing the whole story with us. I totally understand from personal experience it's not easy at all to talk about some kind of incident that has happened to you, so huge respect and thank you. And my question would be that several of the things that you mentioned have happened in the past. They are things that we have been through as a community, right? And they have been resolved. One thing that I would ask is the deterministic deployment addresses kind of issue has been addressed by Gnosis in the past, I believe. Then the second question would be, from what I understand, the proposal contract was upgradable or was able to be upgradable by the user who made the proposal. And the contract itself could contain code which can be executed. Were the user able to decode that piece of code, and were they educated by the Tornado Cash team to be knowledgeable enough to understand what that code does, and if they understand that it's malicious, to kind of decline the proposal?
The proposal contract, it essentially gets like delegate called from the governance contract, and so you get the execution contract, and when you have execution context, you can change mappings on the, or you can change whatever storage you want on the governance contract, right? And so if you've got your voting power mapping on your governance contract, you can go in and change that, right? I'm sorry, what was the second part of your question there?
Was, since there was malicious code in the proposal, were the people educated from the Tornado Cash team in order to understand how to decode that code and potentially vote against it?
Yeah, so because it took advantage of like deleting the old proposal and replacing it at the same address, the code that was voted on actually did what it said on the tin, right? Like, the proposal description says it's going to do this, and the actual proposal does actually do that. It's just the fact that they were able to go in after the fact and change what the proposal code was like.
Yeah, I mean, the simple answer to this is like, don't accept any proposals with a self-destruct.
Yeah.
That's kind of my question, pretty much. Did the team from the Tornado Cash do education towards the users to understand this kind of contract proposal or this?
The Tornado Cash team is trying to stay out of jail. I don't know what you think they're up to. Like.
But yes, now we've all learned not to accept the one with the self-destruct. Okay. One last question. Yes.
Thank you. So as one of the solutions, you said audits. More auditing, every update. But could it be that the current state of audits is maybe part of the problem because you have to pay a lot of money for basically the badge? And many of the exploits you've mentioned have actually been audited. Instead of spending the money on a lot of overhead audit firms, would it not be better to spend that money directly on security researchers to avoid these problems in the first place?
Yeah, I think the audit process is Unfortunately, it's overly shaped by what kind of people expect the output to be in a marketing sense. And so there's, like, even projects that have been audited, a lot of bugs get introduced in as part of the remediation phase. And so, the auditor will go and produce a report. And, good auditors will actually follow up and make sure that the remediation is done properly. But often, you'll just have this kind of report as the output. You'll fix the issues, and you'll tick them off on the report saying fixed, fixed, fixed. But what if your fix has a bug in it, right? And so, yeah, I think the auditing process can be improved.
Yeah, I mean, if you can't afford to upgrade your contracts, maybe don't.
That's another T-shirt. Okay. Thank you so much. One last final comment, anything for this event, this exploit, and then you're off.
Thank you for the entertainment.